Have a short agenda, but let's first take our expenses. So we have 31,07742, and it's available in the reports. Anybody have any questions about the expenses? They all seem to be fairly routine, except for the ambient environmental is a little new. But we've discussed that in the building.
Well, that Bob will come out of the construction fund, the unrestricted construction fund, because it involves hazardous material, and we do have some money in that grant for hazardous material.
Yes, okay. I think when we talk about the financial statements, that's an add-on in the end, there may be some discussion about, there will be some discussion about that as to where to put it, and is it a negative or a positive, but yes. Are there any questions about any of the expenses? All right, would somebody like to make a motion to accept for recommendation for payment the August bills?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Thank you, Mark. Do we need a second? I think so.
I'll second.
Thank you, Evelyn. All right, is there anyone opposed to recommending approval to the board of this payment of $31,077.42? Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move on to the financial statements. And we have two sets of financial statements. They're both the same heading, but the one that starts out with a local fund Troy tax levy at 618 is the reduced. It's a reduction change to our expectations that we worked on over several special finance meetings and passed in the last board meeting. Does anybody have any, let's take them one at a time on the reduction. Let's see what my notes are there. Mine. If you look at the statement for July in the new model, in the end, our year-to-date budget would be $38,435.59 of income, and we're actually at $19,580. We're off by $18,000. Given our first month of the reduction, there was some anticipation and it took some time to get into place. And I didn't greet that result with particular concern, especially when we go back to the original. But in looking over the income statements, I think they're very routine, regular expenses. I didn't have any questions of any part, but I wondered if others do before we get to the discussion of the construction money on the bottom, capital projects money. All right. I'm assuming the silence is a lack of question. Does anybody have any question about the income statement on the savings plan? I just have one suggestion, Joy, because the headings for both the annual budget that we had passed and the reduction plan, if we could add something in the title on the reduction plan, either add reduction or some note so that they're easily distinguishable in addition of by the numbers of the tax levy. And Paul, could you talk about the 6,858, 59 on the capital projects?
Where are we here?
At the second page, toward the income, after the budgeted expenses, you list capital projects in a separate year-to-date, 6,858.98.
There's a 6858.
6859, right?
I don't know, why is that in there, Joy?
That's a year-to-date expense. I believe it could be TAP, but I could double check and let you know.
That's a year-to-date, what's been spent,
Spent, right.
okay.
I can look at that and let you know.
Yeah,
I think that may have been my question. And what I was asking was, there's budgeted expense, and then capital projects is separated out, the expenses for that, and that's subtracted from the budgeted expense. My question was, should that be added to the budgeted expense rather than subtracted?
Well, this was what was asked for me to do, like separate the two. It was included before. We could do that again and go back to how we had it.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying that it shouldn't be subtracted, it should be added. So yes, with it being separated out, it shouldn't be reducing the amount of the expenses.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it just seems, it just got my attention this month. I think it's been, that this is the way it's been processed.
Yes.
But it seems to me that it shouldn't be reducing the amount of expenses. It doesn't make sense to me. So if there's an explanation for it, I'd welcome it, but.
I think it's because it's taking the money out, like we're using the money, but that's why it's subtracting it in our system, the way Peachtree records it. So anytime I pay for something that is expensed or put in the code for that particular account, it credits it or subtracts it.
I think it underestimates the expenditures. I'm not sure why it's occurring this way, but perhaps we could talk about it more, Joy,
Sure, yeah.
outside of the meeting. I hate to take up everybody's time because it
Okay,
doesn't look like anybody else has.
looked at, because if the 6858 is not represented in the expenses above, then it would be an add-on, unless you're suggesting because some of it is funded, it should be a detraction from expenses. So but just a question about how we're managing it and how we're representing it.
I think
And what way it hits the bottom line.
the capital projects, there's an income and an expense. Neither one is part of our operating budget. We are required, however, to report any transactions, you know, either income or expenses. So it's put in, you know, sort of at the end. I don't know, Joy, if there is.
I think that's a good way for it. I think it's a good way for it to be displayed. I'm not disagreeing with that. But if you look at it, total expenses before that's put in is, I believe, 655,000. I'm not looking at the,
It's being recorded as a negative expense on the income statement.
Yes.
and and then it's subtracted out of the expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't it be added in?
We could talk, I mean, that's just how the Peachtree system does it, but if you want it done a different way, we can certainly change it. It's just always been done this way, but it doesn't mean that it can't be, modified if need be.
Yeah, it just, it's taking the 755,000 that we have, sorry, it's 755,000 that we have in other expenses, and
Mhm.
it's reducing it by 6,500.
Right.
Well, why should it do that?
I
It doesn't make sense to me, because that 6,500 isn't in that budgeted expense that I
Right.
can. It's doing it like that misrepresents the budgeted expense.
Okay.
Is it misclassified, Joy? Because it's
off budget. It's not part of the budget. I'm not sure why it actually works that way, other than the fact that we have to report it.
Right. I think it's we just always had it in there because like Paul said, for the reporting, but I think because I'm paying the bills through our Peachtree system, it's cataloging it as an expense, but it's a capital expense.
yes, but what it's doing is it's reducing net income.
Yes.
It's actually increasing net income, excuse me, by the amount that you're spending, and that's not correct accounting.
But unless anybody objects, I can talk with Joy about this more.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about it more and see.
Yeah, because right now, if you look at budgeted income, total of $768,000 year to date, and you look at year to date income, and then year to date actual expenses is 75. The difference between those two numbers is roughly $13,000, and when you you're adding back an expense to actually increase the net income by $6,000, or almost $7,000. So is it miscoded? Because a negative expense is actually income. Is this coming from you writing checks to pay bills, or is this coming from money that's sitting in a bank account that's being classified as income?
Well, what
Or
happened?
money that we've received?
I think it's a problem here in terms of, since it is an off-budget item, the capital project line, we don't really want to show it as an expense on our budget. And I think this is what you're seeing.
Well, we're showing it as an income, though. We don't want to show it as an income either, because it's affecting the bottom
Not
line.
at all, but it's somehow worked into
Well, I
this
think,
particular system.
yes, what happened was we didn't have that there before, and like previous boards said that it should be on there so that they can see it. So
Yeah.
of course we put it on there, but it just depends on what you all want it to show.
No, it's not what we want it to show. It's whether it's being expressed properly.
Okay.
And I don't think it is. I think it's misleading. So it's not the fact that it's separated out. It's that it's taking how much we've expended on other things and subtracting the amount that we're expending on capital projects. So it looks like that what we've expended on other things is actually lower by $6,000 than it actually was. And so I think it's a mathematical operation that's occurring there, perhaps because of the way Tree is handling it, but it gives them a misimpression.
Sure, yeah, I could look into that more.
I think the purpose of the financial statement each month is to track our whole finances. So if we think of it as an income statement, I think it's beyond an income statement, it's financial statement for the month. And you do want to represent 6,800 over since January. The question is just how do you represent it so it doesn't falsely diminish or add to our expected income. So it's accurate. All right, I guess we'll work on that for this next income statement. But
Yep.
we need to discuss it more. We will. Probably offline would be the easiest.
I have a couple of other concerns with the income statement. I have a couple of other issues with the income statement.
Oh,
I think the special services categories and how they're handled on it are misleading. And I don't have a solution for that. But it makes it appear like we have $100,000 more in our budget than we actually do. What we actually net under special services is more like $2,000. And yet we're reflecting $100,000 worth of revenue for special services and then expensing about $100,000. So I'd like to see if we could handle that some way that it doesn't inflate our income, our revenues as it appears to. Anybody have any comments on that?
just like a better explanation of what special services represents.
Do you want to do that, Paul, or do you want me to do that?
But if it's balanced out because it's in the inbox and the outbox, so it balances it, does it?
The special services
It doesn't-
is the navigator and tax. And so we get like 2% back from the navigator.
Right.
But really we're just a pass through.
Well, I think I'm going to need some expertise here. We're required to report, our system requires us to report income and expenses. Totally. That system runs, if we put money into the system, it's going to report that on the income statement. The same way with expenses. How do you get around that? I don't know. But the auditors in the past have said you have to do that.
So perhaps we can discuss it with the auditor when we meet with them.
That's why
as
I
to-
think I would need expertise here because I have no way of dealing with that.
Yeah, it is kind of misleading when you're trying to figure out how you're doing, when you're
Well,
trying to actually
But-
use the
Well,
budget.
I know the actual income is only about 2,000. So,
But if it's
I figure that in when I'm doing the reports.
But if
So-
it's in bulk,
So if the actual income's only $2,000, why are we showing $27,000 year to date?
Because we take in about $100,000 from people putting money on their bus cards. And then we have to pay CDTA, whatever we owe, leaving the net, that's compensation for us of about $2,000.
In a normal year, you're going to see well over $100,000 in there.
Yeah, we do about $10,000 worth of business a month under
Well,
ordinary.
Yeah. Then this would be this is actually it's counted correctly
yeah.
because you have an income item for that, and then you have an X, and the net between the two of those things is whatever we take in as the net income from that. But that's not something that you would actually break. You You would only break that out if you were doing a income statement for special services.
Right, so if it's in both columns, if it's in the revenue and in the expenses, and it balances out to what we really are making, it's not inflating our revenues in the bottom line.
Well, at the
Well,
moment,
but
it's
what-
deflating them
When we,
because there's a $7,000 deficit in that particular line item between the revenue and the expense.
when we say we have a $1,300,000 budget, we don't really have that extra 100,000. It's making it sound like more than we actually have. Also, when you go to look at it now, when you're not getting that, it looks like you're short all that revenue that you have to
Yeah.
make up. So it just
That's,
makes,
yeah, that's the nature of a cash basis of accounting without a balance sheet on it. And if there was a balance sheet in place, that money would sit on the balance sheet until we actually distribute it, and you take them
Bob, I
both
think,
at the same time.
I have quite a bit to actually cover here.
Yeah.
And we're pretty much running out of time. I can look into these other things as we go along, but we still need to consider some other things.
okay, so I have one other thing, and that's, I think it would be good to separate out this year's tax revenue versus past year's tax revenue, because it makes it hard to know how much we're actually getting out of what we should be getting. So that's another change that I would like to see. And we can talk about that more later, but I wanted to bring it up so people could be thinking about it and have input.
I think I'd like to move on in this meeting and raise that at another time, Marie.
That's fine.
If we want to have it represented in next month's, then we should have a conversation about it and meet with Paul.
You said it was a light meeting, so I thought I would bring it up today.
Okay. So it's a placeholder. All right. I don't know what utility there is in us looking at the original budget. The figures are the same. Does anybody have any question about the second financial presentation? The one where we did not reflect the changes that we agreed to for the year and looked at the year to date. It's actually a little more attractive in its results. It shows us ahead by 27,000, but I think we've committed to the reduction, and I think we need to stay at it until it becomes clearer what direction we're going in.
Paul, is this a good place for you to update with the information from the city about the tax receipts that they got?
As I said, I got quite a few things here that are Finance Committee news. I talked with Andy Piotrowski today. Actually, I've been trying to reach him, but I knew that his analysis was ongoing at this point. Right now, he was able to pretty much finalize the 2020 collections. And his words are, it's good news, basically. In his analysis and comparison of tax collections with 3 years, including 2020, the city is already ahead. So there's not a running deficit. We're actually ahead of expected tax collections. So this impacts us. We've been trying to deal with a 10% cut in tax revenue, which so far they're not seeing. And I would like to recommend that we reinstate most of the book budget.
Excuse me, Paul. Whoever's typing, could you just
Mute?
mute? Because I can't hear Buck over the sound of typing.
I'm sorry? Was that a question? I didn't.
Yeah, I said whoever was typing, if they could mute their microphone because I couldn't hear what you
Oh,
were saying over the sound of their typing.
well, as I said, the good news is that tax collection in the city is actually ahead of what they expected. And is actually ahead of the last 2 years in tax collections. There was some problems with people coming in to pay taxes, and that was slow. And it's still somewhat behind, but they had received a lot more in escrow than they expected. So basically, for 2020, we're probably in a pretty good shape going forward. I think we also need to at least be aware of the second budget that I prepared from our discussion in the July meeting. And that second budget calls for a 1.99% tax increase for 2021.
Paul, if I could interrupt you, I think it's an important subject and we'll be handling it at the board meeting because everybody who will need to weigh in on it we'd need to repeat the whole conversation about the two. So that's why I didn't put it on the agenda. I thought it would be better use of our time to have that discussion in the board meeting rather than the finance
I
meeting.
understand, Bob, and I think, obviously it's up for discussion at the board meeting, but there is a technicality here that the finance committee might want to be aware of. When I said I increased the budget 1.99%, it was an effort to be under the 2% tax cap. But technically, we don't have our local number of what is our limit until about the second week in September. So 1.99 is essentially a guess. It could come out to be 1.98. It could come out to be 1.89. So that's going to make some difference in what we put on the ballot. So there's two ways of handling that. One is to wait until we actually have the proper number and put it on the ballot. So our ballot's a little bit late, but there it is. The second way is for the board at this meeting to approve going over the tax cap as we have a number of times in the past, so that we can use the 1.99, and just in case, our number comes out to be 1.89, we've already passed a resolution to exceed the tax cap. So those are the two options for that particular budget that we have.
Okay, I'd like to defer the continued discussion to the next meeting. I do have some questions about it, but it's 5:30 now. And did you have an update on the audits, Paul?
What time?
Did you have an update on the audits? It's on the agenda for this meeting.
No, I haven't. Joy, I don't know, they're still working on the audit?
They're still working on it, and I am still waiting to hear back about a meeting. We normally have like a meeting to talk about 2019 and so on. They have not been able to schedule that yet, so I'll keep you posted.
Okay, but in the last meeting, Paul, you said you would contact them and find out the status, because in our board meeting, when we contracted with him, he did say he thought he would give us a July report, and you were going to do the status. I would like to know the status before the next board meeting.
I just,
We
the
raised
staff
it
basically is
last
that they're
week.
not done. I don't know, when you talked to them, Joy, did they say anything about,
I mean, it's just such a, the timing right now is, I'm not sure who's in, if they're doing like teams or whatever in their office, but the person that we normally was dealing with, is no longer in the company. And so it's somebody else that we were working with also before, but she has not gotten back to me yet.
All right.
And Joy, when you say that a meeting, is that a meeting that occurs with the library staff, or is that the meeting that occurs with the board?
It's a meeting that she and I normally have. Um, who her name is Pat,
Mhm.
and or Patty. Patty usually comes and we have, she has her suggestions, and then I have my questions, and we talk about any changes and so on.
All right. Well, maybe we can move up the conversation and we're not
I'll-
waiting until the board meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll reach out to her again.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Is there any other business for the finance meeting? And I'd suggest we adjourn. I hear a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All right. And second? Imagine that. I'll second.
No, I second it.
All right, there we go. Thank you, Mark. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay.
Are we starting the other meeting right away?
Well, it is 5:30.
Okay, I'll just continue the recording.
Okay. So the first is there any public comment? Hearing none. Move on to the next item, and we do have some public here. Treasurer's report. Bob?
We've just concluded our finance meeting. Let me get the figure for our expenses. And, sorry. I need to go to the August file, or Joy, you could pop me the number. I'm looking for the number of our approved expenditures for August.
Sure, I'll look for it. One
July
second.
expenditures.
It's $31,077.
You're muted, Joy.
No, she's not. I heard her.
Well, maybe, no, I'm muted. I'm sorry. You weren't muted. I was muted.
Do you want me to repeat that?
Yes, please.
$31,077.42.
Okay, the finance meeting, we approved the July expenditures in that amount, and I would recommend board approval.
Also move. Is there a second?
I'll second.
You're on the committee.
I'll second.
I'm sorry, why can't he second?
It's just a point of, here, I've got to go back to this. Just a point of process that a member of the actual committee usually isn't appropriate to either to second. It should be someone who's not on that committee.
Then I don't second.
Well, I moved and I'm on the committee. Is that a problem?
Are you on the committee? Are you ex officio? And
I'm ex
actually,
officio.
that should be really Bob's position, is to make the motion because he's treasurer. And then someone else that is a non-committee member makes the second.
When I
Okay, so Bob, was that a motion to approve?
said I was stumbling for the amount, 31,000, et cetera, that Joy had just said. I didn't have the paper in front of me because it wasn't printable. I make the motion that we approve our July expenses in the amount of 31,000. Could you finish the Rest, Joy?
Sure. $31,077.42.
Thank you. We reviewed the expenditures at the finance meeting. It was agreed to recommend approval. I make a motion that we approve the expenditures in that amount.
And Kirsten, you seconded, did I hear?
I'd be happy to second it, yes.
Okay, all in favor, and we need verbal approval.
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? The motion carries. Anything else, Bob, on the treasurer's report?
No, I have nothing else to report.
Okay. So next is approval of the minutes. Does anybody have, oh, sorry, the consent
Are you
agenda.
doing the consent agenda?
Sorry,
Yeah.
no, sorry. So next is the consent agenda.
Could our minutes, by the way, reflect, thanks, Michelle, what's actually in the consent, what's actually in the Dropbox for this month? Please?
I'm not hearing what you're saying.
I think that she's saying that not all these reports are necessarily provided.
I
So-
thought the last minutes, I thought I did them the way that you wanted me to. So
Yeah.
if there's not, then you need to let me know personally
Okay.
what the problem is and I'll
Right.
fix it.
I'm just reiterating that request again.
Yeah, and I thought I did it right the last time, and if I didn't, I need to know so I can fix it. Like when I do them, because I do them like, I submit them the day that I'm trying to get them into you guys to Joy to post the same day, so.
You're very good with the minutes, Michelle.
You're really good. I love the format, by the way, Joe.
I'm always open to make change, I just need to know.
Anything else? So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll motion to move.
Is there a
the consent
second?
agenda.
No second?
Second, Doherty.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Nays? Motion carries. Next, I think we're going to have to skip over this because Arlene isn't on the Zoom meeting.
Is she coming today, by the way?
As far as I know, she is. So Bob, or not Bob, Paul, the next item on the agenda is the 2020 election.
Yes. Couple of things. I still do not have any candidates for the two open positions. I did receive notification that Mark will not be running and Arlene will not be running. So those positions are open. The deadline for submitting nominating petitions is actually pretty close, August 28th. And that deadline comes about because by law, those petitions need to be submitted 30 days before the actual election. So there's not a whole lot we can do to extend that. If you know people who might be interested in running, now would be a good time to talk with them. And as I say, I haven't heard from any interested candidates yet. We talked with the League of Women Voters. Marie and I met with Judy and Margaret Story. They feel that they are able to help us conduct the election, to actually conduct the election. Right now, as it stands, there is no state regulation against in-person elections. So we are going ahead with the idea of the in-person election in both locations. one change that will be at the main library is we hope to have the actual election in the larger reading room upstairs so that we have plenty of space for social distancing. Normally, we've had it in the office, and there's just not enough room there. Um, we also have changed the absentee ballot form. We're going to encourage people to submit an absentee ballot. We have added the fact that, one excuse is, you can't be in the building because of the coronavirus or other illness. So we put that as, something you can check off on the application for an absentee ballot. That application will be on the website and pretty much everywhere else. I had Joy put it in the Dropbox this afternoon, so you can take a look at it. That recommendation was from the Board of Elections at the county. And I did talk to Ed McDonough, and he did say that, so far, everybody has plans to go ahead with in-person elections, with the caution that that could change overnight. I think that's all I had. Marie, you were at the meeting. I don't know if I left out anything.
Not that I can think of, Paul. There was a concern about folks' comfort level and the representatives felt that there may well be people from the league who will be willing to do this, that they needed to know what the procedure would be to approach them. And also, discussion of the flexibility of the absentee ballot in terms of them not wanting to ride the elevator to go upstairs, that they could use an absentee ballot in that case, and that would provide some flexibility.
One other thing, and that I kind of did leave out, was we haven't set anything regarding a candidate information night. I'm assuming that would be virtual and not in person. Although, as I say, we don't have any candidates yet, but I don't know what your pleasure is on that item at this point.
But Paul, might it also not be not just for candidates, but to explain the budget?
What's on?
Those nights weren't just to meet the candidates. It was also to introduce or explain, shall we say, the budget to the public.
Right.
Well, we usually had the two, one after the September board meeting, and then another one that week at Lansingburg.
Well, yeah, but this will be, if you want to set it up as a virtual meeting,
Right.
we wouldn't really need two.
Right. So I'm
We just
thinking
need one. And I would suggest having it in conjunction before, after, right around the September board meeting.
okay. Well, are you thinking about continuing, right? Let's say we have our board meeting on September 8th and just doing it that day, just continue the run that evening? There's no pizza? Yay, nay?
I'm not sure I heard the proposal, but
Oh, well, if we're meeting on September 8th, meeting at 5:30, going till we set the time like we usually do, till whatever, and then just continue into the virtual meet the budget slash possible candidates meeting.
well, I think that would make sense.
Okay.
I can't tell whether I'm muted or not. Am I muted?
You are not muted.
No.
Now you're not.
Now you are.
Paul, could you speak perhaps to what the effect would be if we don't get any candidates?
What's that?
Could you speak to what the outcome would be if we don't have any candidates for the upcoming election?
I don't know. I'm not hearing.
I'm sorry.
I'm not
Uh,
hearing.
I was wondering if you could speak to what happens if we don't get any candidates to fill vacant positions.
Well, that does happen in the library business from time to time. The board would then be able to select a person to fill that role for the year. And that person then would run in the next election the following September. I mean, that's possible. And that's one scenario.
Greta,
Yes,
have you publicized the fact that the library is seeking candidates?
yes. Well, I reposted the Facebook announcement that the library put out.
Thank
I
you.
think I may also have included in, we just recently sent a note to all the members of the Friends about various activities that we're doing. And I'm not sure whether I included the candidate issue. I don't think I did.
Anybody have any ideas on how to reach folks that might be interested?
I think we should post it to, I don't know if you did or not, Marie. I think you're part of Helens of Troy, the group on Facebook. Are you part of the Helens group? I think we
I
should
am.
post it. I think if you haven't, I think we should post it there.
Okay.
There seem to be a lot of, I mean, there's a good number of people there who are civic minded, who are, you know, joiners, and it's a pretty diverse group. So we might actually be able to pull in some diversity if we can find some folks that are interested.
Yeah, we have posted it on all of our social media sites. We've also actually paid for an advertisement in the Record. And it's on our website, of course. I think the best way that this can get around is probably at this point word of mouth. And word of mouth from existing trustees who know people who might be interested. I guess that's going to be the best way to get the word out.
And unfortunately, with COVID, I know I'm not coming in contact with as many people as I do ordinarily.
Right.
And with whom I usually talk, we usually pass out the bookmarks. And as I'm handing those out, I think I'm usually, do we do those prior to getting candidates?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so, and at that time, I usually encourage people too. So we're kind of limited this year or constrained over what we can usually do by word of mouth. Evelyn's often in the farmer's market on behalf of the library. That isn't happening this year. So I think we're feeling the consequences of that. But as Paul says, if anybody knows of anyone that you think might be likely.
Thank you. They're due on the 28th.
Yes, they're due August 28th.
Now, is the number of signatures on the petition reduced because of COVID?
Yes, it is. There is a, they passed a state law, mostly affects big petitions, but all petitions have been reduced to the point of 70% of the requirement. Now, our requirement is only 25 signatures. So now you need 17 and a half. So yeah, it's a little less. I mean, I would definitely tell people to get 20 anyway, just to make sure, because, you know, occasionally somebody signs a petition and they're not a resident, and then we can't really, you know, accept that signature.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't think there's anything more we can do except to encourage people to get the word out. Thank you, Michelle, for the suggestion. I'll follow up on that. And what was the conclusion? Are we doing the informational meeting, one informational meeting, correct? On Zoom, is that correct?
Yes, one informational meeting, and the suggestion was following the September board meeting on the 8th.
And so what time is that?
We didn't resolve.
We could set the time maybe at 7.
So we can let people know what time to connect in. Anything else on the election? Okay, I'll move on to the next topic then, which is approval of the 2021 budget.
Yes, at our July meeting, I presented a budget that shows no tax levy increase for 2021. And what that would mean would be a pretty substantial reduction in the book and materials budget. And also, I did include a salary increase, but only 1.5%, which is not, it would not be in compliance with our current salary schedule. So we talked about the possibility of some tax increase. So I did prepare a budget that theoretically is under the tax cap of 2% and contains a 1.99% change increase in the tax levy. That brings in about another 23,000. And what I propose to do with that would be to comply with the salary schedule that was set up in 2019 and approved by the board. And also it wouldn't be quite as damaging to the book and materials budget. Most everything else is pretty much overhead, so there's not a significant amount of change from one of those budgets to the next. I presented it, you'll take a look at the budgets in the Dropbox. The one labeled 2021 is with no tax increase. So you'll see the tax levy is exactly the same. And then the alternative 2021 budget includes the 1.99% tax increase.
Do we know what the increase would be for the taxpayer?
Not offhand, no. Fairly small, I suspect.
Well, could you give a little more detail?
Is there
about-
discussion? Bob, were you about to say something?
Yes, I had just, I had asked, Paul, can you give a little more detail about the salary schedules from 2019? You make a general statement about them, but what, could you quantify it? What was in the salary scales? Have they been communicated to people? Anticipate them? Give us I'd like a little more sense of impact if we're abandoning them. So when you say it was set up in 2019, what was the salary scale?
The salary schedule that we have is made up of steps, obviously. I think we had 12 steps. And those steps were for each year. So that basically it's a longevity increase. The increase averages about 3%. Each 3%.
3%.
No, 3%. 3.
Okay, 3%.
Yeah.
Per year, per person?
For each year.
Is that 3% per year per person?
3%.
Yes, Bob. It means a 3% increase for each
Per person per year.
staff person. Yeah.
I'm a little bit taken aback for a couple of reasons, is that I didn't know until this meeting that the city was running at or above the tax collection rate. So there was always an assumption, and we were building models around an expectation of a 10%, possibly a 10% decline. And I just, and following the news of the day, with the numbers of unemployed and just the economic challenges of the country, I just had an idea prior to 2 hours ago that we were really facing deficits and people's deficiency in income broadly, the number of unemployed, the number of businesses not expected to be able to resume, etc., as a somewhat bleak time financially. And when we had our finance meeting and talked about the budget and the increases, we voted 3-1 not to go for a tax increase. And that discussion included a sense of potential reaction from taxpayers who might find the request for increased taxes unsettling. And I think we said at the time, we've always had great support from the citizens for the library and have not had a problem getting their affirmation, but that a tax increase request at this time might open up opportunities to engender some questions and negativity, and that if we could hold our tax increase off and not require a budget approval, that it would be in our best interest to continue that kind of supportive relationship in this kind of environment. So when I saw the increase in your information sent out for the board meeting, I was very surprised. But the information that you're giving is also different than what I had perceived and anticipate across the board. I mean, great numbers of people, more than 1 million on unemployment, are looking at deficits and possibly significant deficits. For our state alone, we're talking about a 44 billion pickup from what's not being provided at the federal level. So it's somewhat chaotic, and I was very happy because it seemed that we were moving for no tax increase, which would keep the conversation absent in regards to the library and its taxes. So I'm sort of surprised. On the other hand, 3% a year increase is a tremendous benefit in this environment. And I don't know that it's obligatory to keep it up. We certainly did everything we could in this interim period in regards to COVID to help the staff not feel financial consequences. And, we've done a number of things, including reducing the materials budget. So that's a lot to keep up. It's not in keeping with the environment. So I'm not quite sure what to do. When we quantified the amount of tax increase that we get, it wasn't that significant either. So I just haven't, I'm puzzled, or I don't know. I'm unnerved about it. I don't know what to think.
Evelyn?
There's something that you also may not be aware of. Our staff is so underpaid that to a certain, we were having great numbers of turnover. We were very lucky. We have some very loyal, stalwart members of our staff that stayed, but it was difficult. It was difficult to retain. It was difficult to recruit staff. There are staff members who at the salary level we were giving, and again, this is in comparison to libraries in our category and in our size. There were staff members who were living under the poverty level based on the salary we were paying them. It took 2 years to put in I will put it fairly, somewhat equitable salary structure. In comparison to other libraries, we are still not at a forefront of paying our staff by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we were like number 27 out of 29.
Wow.
In what we were paying them. Like I said, it took 2 years of thoughtful, careful increases to the budget, to our ask of the citizens of Troy, to come up with this salary schedule. And what you're seeing is this enormous amount is literally just trying to keep us somewhat afloat. If we had been doing this over the years, we wouldn't be in this position. But like other things that were left undone, we were not in a good position. And if we can have this budget and not put the library again at in jeopardy, I think it's something that it's important for us not to renege on.
Mark?
Yeah, so I have a similar perspective to Bob. I'm looking right now, I just kind of looked it up. A year ago, in August of 2019, the unemployment rate in the state of New York was 3.9%. I have no idea what it was in the city of Troy or Rensselaer County, but I'm guessing that it's probably somewhere in that general vicinity. And in June of 2020, the unemployment rate for the state was 15.7%. And over 1 million people lost their jobs just in the state of New York. And I'm sure, that's more heavily downstate because the population's greater. But you know, in that kind of environment, and considering that, you know, I don't think the city of Troy has really felt the long-term effects of what this economic situation is going to do to the city, and probably to the tax rolls of the city. We have a lot of, you know, there's a delayed effect to it. And, you know, New York City's economy is, you know, what the damage that's been done to that is just starting to come out. And those things aren't even being taken into consideration when you talk to the governor, you listen to the governor talking about the budget shortfall in the state in this year. And when you hear the mayor talking about the financial situation in the city of Troy right now, we're basing our decision only on the tax receipts so far this year. And I think we would be naive to think that we're not going to see it get a lot darker before it gets better, regardless of what might be happening in the stock market. And so, you know, the idea of going to the voters and asking them for an increase in the tax levy for the library seems really incredibly bad timing and very insensitive to the things that are going on in the world right now. Considering the fact that, you know, this board decided, you know, we could have furloughed the employees when we were in the position when things got bad and people couldn't go to work, and we chose not to. We chose to keep everybody on staff and pay them and find ways for them to be able to do work when other organizations furloughed, and we decided not to do that. And I think I've got to believe that the staff understands that we wish for their best benefit, and we would love to be able to give them the 3% increase every year, and maybe even more, because we are, you know, underpaying them. But the reality of the situation is, I think if we were to go to taxpayers in the city of Troy and ask them to approve a 2% increase in the library budget, you know, I know my neighbors who are not poor would probably vote it down. And I have great concern and that this could open up a fairly big negative feeling towards the library, which I think is in generally looked very favorably by the community.
Michelle, you had your hand up.
Well, I'm just reminded of the whole conversation that we had a month ago, which we talked about this exact same thing, where, and I started out with the same concerns that Mark and Bob are talking about. And I think Arlene was the one who sort of got to me with some of her comments. You know, I think I get it. And that my position was in the same place where this isn't the right time to ask for more money. And it may not be the right time for a long time. As you said, we may not feel these impacts fully for a while. And the worst thing that happens is that we ask for it and it gets voted down. Overall, it's a very small increase. What I pay toward library tax is very small compared to what I pay for all the rest of the stuff. And I get a lot less out of my other utilities in the city of Troy, let me tell you, with garbage and recycling. So we won't even go there. But I certainly don't want to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. But I feel like not doing it because we anticipate it might be a problem is a bad way to go down, is a bad road to start down, because this may be the tip of the iceberg and it may never get better, or at least not anytime soon. So the worst thing that happens is that we ask for it, it gets voted down, and we are right where we started financially. We were at the same budget. I don't believe that people have long memories. Most people don't have long memories. I don't think that when things start to get better, when we ask for money the next time, they're going to remember, oh, these greedy library people wanted that extra $10 out of my taxes and I'm not giving them anything now. I just think that I find it very concerning that we have staff that can't live, you know, that have been that close to the poverty level. That should not be something that's okay. If we can try, that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just like to comment on that. I remember a number of years ago, I don't have a terrible witness in court, but I remember a time not too long ago where the state of New York developed a minimum tax increase for school budgets, because school budgets all across the state were being voted down if they included any increase at all, over and over and over again. And I don't think that the worst thing that could happen is that it would get voted down this year. I think the worst thing that could happen is that it could continue. We could be in a position where we continually have our budgets voted down because we've created bad feelings within the people who, have traditionally supported us. And I don't think people have as short of memories as I just think people remember your last mistake a lot longer than they remember your last great thing that you've done.
Freda, I have to.
I know I'm not on the board, but there's one.
I have to give precedent to the board members.
The board discussion of voting members of the board.
So Evelyn.
Got to be restricted.
Evelyn.
One, I'm thinking of this year's school budget, which did pass, and there was an increase. 2, I don't really think the public's going to be thinking of us as being greedy, because the dollar amount is usually like the cost of a Hershey bar, less than a cup of coffee. And I'm not talking about a specialty cup of coffee. 3, I've seen what happens when the board backs off of trying to make an increase and the budget falls further and further and further behind, to the point that you either have to make a giant leap forward or do without more and more, to the point that it's desperation. And Mark, this is not questioning your expertise, your acumen about the public. And to be honest, I'd hope that if we go forward with this, you would use those marketing skills to promote the budget with those neighbors who might want to vote it down and explain why it had to be done. But, again, I've seen what happens when the board says we can't do this out of fear, out of those concerns. And it's not a good situation for the library, not just sometimes in the short run, but certainly in the long term, because again, we keep falling further and further back. For this increase, again, I think it might be about, I'm trying to remember what the Detroit school system did, but I knew there was an increase. And I think other school systems, as long as they weren't asking for a 19% increase, had their budgets passed. I think it's something to try. And I think that if it does get voted down, then we just do a much better job at explaining, to begin with, by the way, and then after, to go through this of why. And maybe there's some other ways, if it does get voted down, we can say, okay, this is what happened and why, and what we need. But it needs, I think, is a shot we actually need to take. And I'm sorry, Arlene, I think you were so much more articulate last month than I could ever be about this. I had that, I felt that way before, and I think you solidified how I was feeling and stated it even better than I ever could.
Yeah, I think our job is to stand for the library, not to anticipate what people's emotional reaction is going to be. And I think we have been clear that we need to catch up our staff's salary because our staff is one of our biggest assets. And we sort of made a pledge to do that. I think we all believe in that. And we provide a service to the city, and we hopefully we all really believe that, and we value the service that we do provide to the city, and that asking for the small tax increase is not, I don't think it's going to put anybody over the edge. And I think, and maybe even especially during this time, libraries are so important. You know, it's one community place where people can still feel connected. I have the same feeling about it as I did last month. I think we should request the increase.
And I just want to say, like, thinking about the staff and how amazing they were and how flexible they were and how creative they were coming up with all the things they did virtually. And I mean, that's it's a selling point. I mean, these guys aren't phoning it in. They're a staff that is, you know, they're precious, for sounding kind of corny, but, like, you know, they love their job and they've adapted and put in, whether it's music or stories or all the stuff they've been able to do and do virtually. Like, you can't, I mean, you can't replace that easily. And I think that's something that the community, like, it's our job then to sell that.
Anyone else? Kirsten?
I would just offer that
Oh, sorry.
if tax collections are running ahead so far this year, that's a good sign. And we will have greater chance of success asking for a small increase now while taxes are running ahead than we will if taxes turn down in 6 months or a year. So this may actually be the time to ask for a small increase as a hedge against future economic challenges.
Good point.
Bob, I think Bob was next.
Yeah, I just want to say, it seems like the vote might not be going the way I'd like it to go. But what I would like to do, if the vote goes to ask for an increase, is we need to put the reasons clearly to the public and use the concern for staff, highlight the staff, give the history of economics of the staff. And I think that will be a very important part of trying to get an approval, is that people see it as humane and important to our staff. So I would just, Paul, in the past, not been able to talk about salaries, don't get information about individual salaries, don't want to talk about that. But in a conglomerate way, if I have to try to advocate for approval of a tax increase as treasurer, I'd like to be well armed in that discussion. Thank you.
Evelyn?
And just to also, that's a good point. That's a perfect point. But also, you know, if we were trying to explain this, is to explain the materials budget too, especially in a time when things are going virtually, where we're paying for other things. I think it's important to remind people that there are these other expenses at this point that we might not have dealt with in the past too. But I think that's another part of that, the talking points.
Yes.
If I could add, in response to that too, Bob, sometimes it's difficult to have budget increases for staff, but I don't think that's the case right now. I think people are aware of the staff working in a public place with public coming in all day long. And the kind of, I think, sacrifice that's being made, I think will resonate with people, and I think they'll respond to an increase in staff salaries.
Anyone else? Kristen, you lit up, so that was just.
I'm still thinking about, I think we had said historically the Troy salaries were about 27th out of 29. I assume it's out of the libraries in our region, and want to make sure we're using current data when we have that conversation, not talking about data that's 3 or 4 years old. So this does change, of course, and I'd want to hear the newest information to confirm that status.
And if I just to I think it's saying the same thing, but I think when we ask for a tax increase, it's because we know the reasons that we are asking for it, and we don't come at it from whether we think the people will like it or not like it. Our job is to do what we think is right for the library, and I believe wholeheartedly in that the library needs the extra support.
Anyone else? In reference to Mark's comment about this not being the worst that can happen, I've actually had people say to me, well, if you raise taxes too much, then you may get those people who are against taxes running for the board. So you could have people on the board who aren't amenable to raising taxes. I did go and ask my limited number of people I came in contact with how they felt about a tax increase this year. And it was pretty much 50-50. And it wasn't necessarily related to how well off they were as to whether they were willing to support the library. But I would say it wasn't clear cut as far as the feeling of people in spite of the difficulties this year. Do we feel ready for a vote on really we're voting on the tax levy?
I would just like to say one more thing. I think our staff deserves hazard pay. And so I just want everybody to know that my feelings aren't related to what I think that our staff deserves or what I think our organization deserves from the community. I'm just looking at an economic reality that hasn't played itself out here in Troy yet. And I'm worried that the accelerated payments and taxes that the city of Troy has seen so far is related to bank escrows from mortgages that were collected 6 months or more before that were paid into the tax rolls, and not the average person who owns a piece of property paying their taxes out of their bank account. And that their bank accounts look rather different today than they did maybe 6 months ago. And I think, my vote needs to be what I think is right for the library. And I think what's right for the library, it's long-term sustainability. And it's love that it has in the community. And before I moved here, I moved from a community that had anti-tax people run for the school board. And it was incredibly detrimental to the school district. And I'd hate to see that happen here.
I guess my feeling is that if people are so opposed to this increase that we're asking for, that they want to run for the board. If they don't get on the board and are convinced that there's a reason for the tax increase, then maybe there shouldn't be a tax increase. I think our decision isn't how are people going to feel about it. Our decision is, do we believe that we are asking for something for a legitimate reason? I think we're asking for this not only for a legitimate reason, but for the necessity of the survival of the library. And then the voters are the ones that let us know if economically it's not going to be sustained, they'll vote it down. But that's not our job to make that decision for them.
I think, Mark, too, I mean, in terms of long-term sustainability, I think that has a lot to do with being able to attract the staff that we need, the staff that we have now, the staff that, you know, can do the job. This is long-term sustainability. If you can't attract a decent staff, you know, you're not sustaining the organization.
I couldn't
And
agree
we
more.
have made progress. We have made progress in being able to increase salaries over the last 5 years, but we can lose ground really quickly out there.
Mhm.
If we don't do anything for a year or two, you've already lost a lot of ground. Because other libraries are increasing staff salaries. So again, we'll be falling way behind, and the work that we've done already will be useless.
Are there any statistics on staff retention during the past 6 months throughout the library district or through the organization, the larger organization?
I'm not hearing that, Kristen. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was asking if there are any statistics available through the Upper Hudson Library System on staff retention through the past 6 months.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've done this study before. This is where we came up with the salary schedule of 2019. You know, basically, staff retention is linked to a number of things, but certainly linked to salaries and benefits.
I was asking about layoffs specifically.
Yeah, we have, and matter of fact, we studied turnover rates, and then salary rates and benefit rates and that sort of thing.
Kirsten, are you asking about what was done in the past, or what has been the more recent experience?
I'm asking what's happened regionally in the past 6 months.
Paul, do you know about the past 6 months, what's the libraries have experienced in our region?
No, I don't have those figures, no.
You know, we've got statistics on in terms of how our salary compares regionally. Be interesting to hear how our decision to retain all of our staff, or nearly all of our staff, how that compares with other organizations.
Yeah, I didn't put together, we put together a full-scale comparison last year, but I did not do that this year, Kristen. I don't have, you know. It's just.
Is there any anecdotal information about other libraries and whether they've retained their staff
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
last 6
we're
months?
still behind. I mean, I can't give you percentages at the moment. I didn't do the study this year, but we are still behind other libraries significantly. We had been behind a good 30% in many cases. I'm guessing now that it will have come up to the point we're probably behind about 20% of most libraries in the area, most libraries of our size. But as I said, I didn't do a full-scale study this year.
Any other discussion? Do we have a motion? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'd make a motion for that we should request a 2.9% tax increase. Is that what we're voting?
1 point.
One.
1.99, is that correct, Paul?
Yes, that's what
Okay.
it is.
Is that one of the budgets that's in the Dropbox?
Yes.
And what's the title of that document?
I think it's just the budget one. It's there's side by side. There's a second column that
Thank you.
has,
But, you know, really, the levy and the budget aren't necessarily the same thing. The
Right.
budget just, you know, says how the levy will be used, but this vote is really on whether we're going to increase the tax levy. Is there a second?
I second it. Beat you, Evelyn. I got you. I got you.
Okay,
As long as it's seconded.
we're going to have to do a slow roll on this. So, Evelyn,
I'm making sure I'm saying this the right way. So I'm voting aye to the 1.99.
increase in the tax levy.
Yes. So that's an aye for that.
Arlene,
Aye.
Bob,
No,
Mark,
No,
Michelle,
Aye.
Kirsten,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye on the basis that at this time with coronavirus and the economic hardship, our libraries need to be there more than ordinarily. So the vote carries. The tax levy increase will be 1.99.
I do have to say that the 1.99 is an effort to stay under the 2% tax cap, but we don't have the exact figure. And that figure is set by the state controller's office. That figure won't be set until about the first or second week of September. We can wait for the exact figure if it happens to be 1.98 instead of 1.99. We can adjust the tax levy on the ballot. It's a little bit close because we like to get the ballots done and so on, but you know, we can make that adjustment at the last minute. We can also avoid that adjustment by passing a resolution to exceed the tax cap this year. This is a resolution we have passed actually now every year since 2010. Because again, problems with that figure from the state controller's office. But it's up to the board, you know, whether you want to wait and adjust the tax levy at the last minute, or whether we want to go with the exact figure of 1.99 and pass a resolution to override the tax cap.
So we can't pass the resolution later if we find that we're exceeding the tax cap?
But why wait?
I think, I mean,
Why wait?
I believe you could pass that resolution at any point before the election.
The resolution is just to stick with the 1.99 regardless of what the cap is set at.
Yeah, if we do that, then we will at some point have to pass, probably have to pass an override. Because the tax cap, rarely does it come out exactly like 1.99. I think the school districts usually do something like this too, especially when they're going to be within, trying to stay within the tax cap.
Anybody else have an opinion? Evelyn?
What, to me, it's like, why wait? It's a document that I think pretty much every year, actually every year, the board's always passed it in advance just to have it at the ready. At some point, we're going to have to do it anyways. And unlike my own personal nature, it's like, why not just get it over with now? We're together, we can vote, we can go aye, nay, and have it done and not have to worry about gathering again in some way, shape, or form.
I guess it's safer to have the resolution passed, considering this year, we don't even know if the last minute they're going to say you can't have an in-person election. I mean, that could happen a week before the election.
Yeah.
So this is just one other thing that we don't have to worry about, I guess.
Any more discussion? Is there a motion? Kirsten?
Hello? Do we need a supermajority to exceed our tax cap?
Yeah, you need,
Is it 5?
5, I think.
5 what?
5 of 7 in our case. So whatever percentage that is.
Kirsten, are you asking for the public vote or are you asking for the
Oh,
resolution?
no, the public vote is always the same. It's just a majority.
It just, yeah, that's what I
you
thought.
need is, anyway, in our case, it's 5 to 7 board members, 5 in favor of exceeding the tax cap.
Huh. With schools, if they exceed the 2% tax cap, they need a supermajority in order to pass that. So
No,
you're saying it does
No,
not apply to libraries?
nope.
No, in our case, the election is still just a matter of a majority.
Okay.
Okay, well, that would only be 4 then. That would only be 4?
Of us, you mean?
Yes.
The board has to be 5 to 7. 5, I think 5, oh boy, now you got me. Let me double check my figures here. Yeah, it's 5 because it comes out to 4.2. I think it's supposed to be 60%. We've always had 100% before, so I didn't pay that much attention to it.
Does someone want to make a motion?
Okay, I shall. I vote that this particular resolution, as stated, with hopefully the correct date, I didn't look, be passed.
I did. I had the resolution in the Dropbox, and I even changed the date.
Yes, I forgot to look for that piece.
Yeah.
Wait a second. I'm confused. I'm confused. Sorry.
There is confusion. I can read what that says. At least I think I can. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. Basically, it says at a duly called meeting of the board, and then somebody makes the motion, somebody seconds the motion. It says resolved that pursuant to General Municipal Law 3-C5, the Board of Trustees of the Troy Public Library overrides the 2021 fiscal year, for the 2021 fiscal year, the tax levy limit imposed by municipal law 3-C3.
Okay. So let me put this in terms that I understand. So
I can send that to you.
yes, I have it. I found it. I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I found it in the Dropbox. I was reading along as you said that. So we already voted to do the tax levy of 1.99. The issue is that we don't know today that it's going to be 1.99. It might be less. It may exceed the cap. And if we need to exceed the cap, then we need to agree on this resolution. And why wait until we find out to go through this resolution? Why not agree ahead of time that if it happens that we need to exceed the cap, then we've already said we're okay with that and pass the resolution. Is that, have I got it?
Yeah,
All right.
does not mean, you approve the tax cap. It simply means Now, this resolution, when I submit the increase to the city's controller's office, they want a copy of that resolution.
Am I clear in understanding that this resolution only comes into play if our tax levy increase is in excess of 2%?
Right.
Or whatever the tax cap is that year.
So how does that, we just agreed to 1.99%, so how would we ever exceed 2%? I don't understand that calculus yet.
Because if I understand it, it gets set by the controller, right? The cap is set by the.
Yeah, it's always under 2%. So we pick a number.
So the controller may say that our cap is lower than 2%?
Yeah, he will give us a figure.
A figure or a percentage?
As to what our tax cap is in this city, in this library.
And that he'll give us a dollar amount, or he'll give us a percentage?
It could be 1.89.
Yeah,
It could be 1.98. It could be any number of things around there.
Yeah. I do believe one year it was 1.89.
Yeah, that's why I guess that came to my mind because.
Yeah, you picked the exact number. I always thought that was very funny. It's a number
It's
that
not based solely on the cost of living index.
Bless you.
It's based on
Thank
local
you.
factors,
Sorry.
of which I'm not really, only the controller's office seems to know.
Okay, so the 2% is not even a thing. We're more concerned. We put it at below 2%, and it's quite possible that the controller is going to come back and say it's 1.89, and so then we need that resolution to kick in to say that we are now exceeding the 1.89 because we've approved 1.99.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, we would be in excess of the tax cap levy.
Okay.
And that shows up in when I make my report to the controller, this bells go off and it says, okay, you've exceeded the tax cap. Again, it's, like I said, it's probably a good idea to have that resolution.
Is there a second? Evelyn, you made the motion, right?
Correct.
Is there Arlene seconds? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Those against?
Against.
One,
Me.
two against. Any
No.
abstentions? Pardon? Two against, correct?
Yes.
Any abstentions? I vote in favor. So the motion carries.
And Michelle, you'll need to record that vote just in numbers, somebody yes or somebody knows.
Yeah, I have right now I have everybody's initials who voted in what.
So there's five in favor, two against.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Now your proposed budget, Paul. I had some concerns on that.
Yeah,
For one, you're showing a revenue of 15,000 for local, LL something or other.
LLSA, local support.
And so far this year, we've seen 0 from them, from whatever that category is. And I don't even know what that is. But I think our revenues from sources other than the tax revenue may be lower.
I'm sorry, 0 where?
I don't, have we gotten anything in the way of that particular revenue under that category this year?
Which one, the E-rate?
No, I think it's LL.
Oh, LLSA, no, the payment is always late. But it will be within the year, at least it usually is. This year, the state has announced that it was cutting local aid by 20%.
Yep.
So that 15,000 in our budget will be cut by 20%. I don't.
So, which is $3,000.
Yeah, I don't know if the governor or the legislators or any of those people have cut their salaries 20%, but they have cut local aid 20%.
Oh,
So we'll see that.
And also the aid to UHLS will be cut. We may be asked to contribute more to that in the upcoming year.
Well, we'll see. We haven't got figures on that because that's not classified the same way. So we'll see what happens with that.
I know that they had expressed that they were fearful of being cut 20%, that's
Yeah.
what
No, I know.
we're anticipating. I also was concerned that about the building repair allocation. So it's greatly decreased from this year to what we thought would be necessary under the lower budget.
Right.
So from,
What do I have? Let's see. Well, slightly back in the no tax increase, I had put 10,000. In the 1.99%, I had put 12,005.
okay,
So
I'm sorry,
it was sort of a compromise. Yeah.
now the 12,005, how does that compare with what was proposed this year? Was that the same?
No.
Yeah, yeah. We cut it back, I can't remember exactly how far. For this year, we cut it back to about 10,000, I think.
Right, but originally?
Originally, it's 16.5. That's what we had in the 2020 budget.
It still seems low considering that we are increasing the tax levy.
Well, like I said, it's only about 23,000. 1.99 is not a lot of an increase. So again, to me, it's a compromise.
Does anybody else have questions on the budget? Evelyn, or is that just extraneous noise, or did you want to say something?
no, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't
Okay.
even realize it made noise.
So, Paul, were you asking for a vote on the budget or just on the tax levy?
What we say in the ballot is we give a total figure for the budget from which the tax levy is X amount. So we mention it as a budget, but you're really voting on the tax levy is the wording. I think.
So we don't need an additional vote.
No, I think the budget on the tax levy is enough.
Okay. Anybody object to my moving on to the next item then? Which is the review of the safety plan?
Yeah, this is, actually, it's, part of it I'm still working on. Evelyn and I met on the safety plan, had a discussion, and I made some minor changes in wording, and those are in the Dropbox. Nothing of substance. And then there was the lawyer recommendations, again, that I need to review, because there may be some changes of substance from that workshop, but I haven't done that yet.
Any of the board members have comments on the safety plan? I noticed that you included more about patrons. How it applied to patrons and
Suggestion,
Yeah.
she was reading it as, you know, a safety plan only for the staff, when in fact, you know, it needed to include patrons. So I said staff and patrons in those, you know, referring to those regulations.
And you know, from what I've heard at sessions I've been to, I would echo that. There was a lot of emphasis on adhering to your safety plan in relation to patrons. So I think that's an important inclusion. I know we also have some in the code of conduct. So both need to be considered together. So Evelyn, do we need to vote on this? How do we indicate our involvement in review?
We do vote on it in a sense to acknowledge and to agree to those changes. Also, anything I have heard or will be hearing, I do a cut and paste or a rewrite and send it to Paul, and then I badger him about them. There's a couple other things that I have sent him. I think that's probably for that next revision, I'm guessing, Paul. But at this point, we will need to acknowledge our understanding of the new safety plan as it is now written. So yes, we'll have to vote on it.
Can we make comments?
Yes, please.
Of course.
You look a little frozen, Mark.
Guess it's not just me then, huh?
No.
Oh, good.
That's the way it looks to me.
I always worry about it. It's my computer.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
now we can.
Are you back?
We can hear you now.
Okay. I just have comment on one bullet. It's the second to last bullet under prevent transmission of air droplets. And it says computers will be cleaned after each use by a patron. What happens if a patron doesn't clean the computer?
No.
And who is going to?
Sorry.
It says patron.
After each patron has used it, a staff member comes in, cleans it before the next patron can reserve that computer.
Ah, gotcha.
Computers are
Never mind then.
strictly reservation only. You have to go to the reference desk. You have to ask for a computer. You are assigned which one. And then once you at your session or the hour is over, the staff member wipes it down completely and then allows another patron to make a reservation on that computer.
Yeah, so grammatically it could be misinterpreted, which is what I did. It says computers will be cleaned after each use by a patron, and I read it as the patron is going to clean the computer.
Fair enough.
Okay, so I'm sure that's an easy change to make.
Yeah.
Any other board comments? Evelyn, do you want to make a motion that we?
I'm thinking in my mind, is it appropriate? Yeah, I guess it would be as if I were that chair and made that.
Yeah.
I will make the motion that this be safety plan as revised on this day be approved by the board.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstentions? Against? Motion carries all unanimously. Next is the director's report.
Yeah, luckily we included almost all of this in our discussions, but except the new construction grant. I had been working pretty hard here trying to put together a new construction grant for next year. This grant is really a two-part project. The first project is repouring concrete floor in the staff kitchen down in the basement. It's the only part of the basement that is not doesn't have a concrete floor. It was somehow left as wood over dirt, and the wood is now rotted. Our estimate for that project is $18,500. And then the second project, which I included, was work on the roof drains in the reading room upstairs, checking for leaks and insulating the roof drains, replacing vents for each of the roof drains, and then repairing all of the plaster in those 4 locations. The cost on that was $68,000. And then we added in 10% for possible hazardous materials work. And so the project comes out to $95,150. The application, of course, went in as a 75-25 application, with the library's share being $23,787. I don't believe there'll be any 90/10s projects this year. Upper Hudson only went back to the original amount of money that they had received in the past. They only have $444,000 to distribute to libraries that apply this year. And the law states that basically a 90/10 application, the 90% cannot exceed 10% of the total amount available, which is $444,000. So ours already does exceed that. I don't envision the board approving any 90/10 grants for next year. So far as all I know is 9 libraries are applying for funds. I don't know the totals yet.
Any questions from the board?
I kind of went through everything else. The project that on the north wall and the east wall, we've had to add hazmat abatement to the bids. Excuse me, I'm running out of voice. We've had to add hazmat abatement so that they're working on that, so that we include that in the bid, and the contractors know exactly what they have to do, to do the abatement project as well.
So
as
the revised RFP hasn't gone out then?
No, well, they went out, but they were pulled back. We're hoping within 2 weeks to be able to bid that again.
And would that be for a start this year or a start next year?
We start as soon as we've got bids. I think there's only gonna be 2 bids, to be honest. But, yeah, we start as soon as we got bids.
Any questions? Are you through with your?
There's a couple little things. The open meeting law has been extended to September 7th. It probably will be extended forever as we go along. So I don't think it's a big problem. And then I already mentioned that state aid, they've already announced, they're gonna cut local aid by 20%. That's it.
You had mentioned earlier that putting the materials budget back. I know I would be more comfortable waiting until we have more than a preliminary report on the the tax revenues. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily preliminary at this point, because it would have been preliminary yesterday. But he seemed to have done a lot of the analysis that was needed. The freeze on the book budget is almost crippling, really. I think it's a big deal. Everybody, was rightfully concerned, oh, what if we run out of money and we're to close? Well, it's almost as bad as that, because if you haven't got the materials, what's your program? So I guess what I would say is maybe at this point, we closed it, we limited it to 50,000. I would say, at this point, maybe it's safe enough to put 10,000 back in. Well, don't forget, it was 104,000 is the original book.
And we took out 50,000, right?
Yeah, we cut it off at 50. We said, we were going to limit it to 50. It's pretty close now. It's 47. We've already spent 47,000.
So you're proposing putting in $10,000 more for the rest of the remainder of the year?
I would propose revisiting that at each board meeting as well, but I think for now, putting 10,000 back, in our plan, because our plan calls for a 10% decrease. So I think it's safe enough to say, putting 10,000 back in is not going to make a big difference.
I think that there are other things that perhaps we should look at as well. I would think this might be a time to consider a self-checkout for the library when people are reluctant to come in contact with other people. So perhaps if it looks like we're going to be having more money back in our budget, we should be considering something like that, which also would reduce the cost of staff. And it seems to me that not having sufficient numbers in circulation has been an ongoing problem. So.
Well, I can certainly get you a price, but I will say right up front, we're really not in that league.
Well, but we're talking about not the usual situation. It's my understanding that you're more likely to get COVID from interacting with other individuals rather than on materials.
Well, I think
so. This may be an ideal time to consider that.
I think are doing the job that they're meant to do. We have we don't need to handle the cards. When in checkouts, we don't really need a lot of contact with patrons as it is.
I know personally, I will use the self-checkouts when I'm in stores and things, in preference to the being helped by a store person because I feel more comfortable doing that.
Well, like I say, I can get prices, but I think self-checkout, first of all, it's hugely expensive, and second of all,
It's about $7,000 to $10,000 as
per capita.
it's about $7,000 to $10,000 is what I was told at the last library conference. And it's capital is less expensive than labor. It's labor that's expensive. So I think I think it might be timely to discuss that now.
Well, as I say, I get a figure, but I don't, having cut the book budget almost over 50%, I don't feel that it's a good idea to spend anything on self-checkout.
But we're talking about this in reference to if our budget turns out not to require that much of a cut. It's
right. Well, yeah, that's how it's going. So if it goes that way, at the end of the year.
I thought it would be, if we're discussing, putting some revenue back in, anticipating that we might have more revenue, that it's a timely discussion to have. Evelyn?
Well, you're correct. It might be a good time to discuss this in the sense of looking at it, the cost, the ability to implement it at our library. But of course, if we don't have materials to check out, it becomes kind of moot. And right now, if we are faced with a, shall we say, deficit new material, how long are we going to put that off? Is there some amount that we can say, Paul, go ahead, open up the spigot a bit, get some more material in while we are looking at this other issue?
Arlene, sorry.
Yeah,
Arlene?
I agree with what Evelyn said about materials versus self-checkout. I just think with all the people that are touching everything throughout the library, I just don't think that the one staff member at the end checking it out adds that big of a percentage to contact that any particular item has had with many people throughout the day. So my preference would be to put money into materials rather than the self-checkout, even at this time.
Well, but I wasn't proposing not putting any money into materials. I was proposing that this be considered if we have more revenue than we were anticipating as
Again, a future agenda or something.
Right, yeah. Not for tonight, but just bringing it up so that it doesn't get totally forgotten about in looking at how to spend those revenues if they are indeed going to be available. Does anybody else have any comments on that? Kirsten?
I thought your comment about looking at in conjunction with other expenses makes a lot of sense. We're certainly seeing self-checkout at the elementary schools and in public schools. So I think it's becoming a trend that we're going to see more and more of. And we should at least be informed about it and understand what the cost implications are and the feasibility of it is, what the policies are and how that's done. So I think it's certainly worth further discussion.
Anybody else? Okay. Anything more on this? No?
Well, how are we resolving to let Paul purchase some more materials?
Did I see a hand? I looked away.
I was scratching my head.
Was there an ask?
Oh, sorry, what? Was there a question?
Kirsten asked whether there was an ask, right? Am I?
As in, Paul has asked that he be allowed, if that's the right way to phrase it, to put some money into materials before the new budget comes in. He was asking for 10,000, I believe.
I'm not opposed to that. I guess that means I'm okay with it.
Does somebody want to make a motion? No?
I shall.
Is there,
Um,
go ahead.
I don't know if you need it rephrased.
Yeah, I do. I do.
The motion would be to allow, if you can find a better word, please do, okay? To allow Paul to reinstitute $10,000 to the material budget at this point in time.
And
Is
where does
this-
that money come from? I'm
Is
confused.
this exceeding the revised budget?
Yes, it would be presuming that there'll be $10,000 more available in revenues than anticipated.
So is this conditional that I'm putting in? Is it a conditional?
It didn't sound like it to me.
Amendment to the approved cutback. And the cutback was to 50,000 from 104,000 in the book budget. What I'm talking about is 10,000 added on to the 50,000, which makes it 60,000.
And where does that 10,000 come from? I think that needs to be clearly spelled out here. We say
We
we're
budgeted 104,000 for materials. It's in the budget.
Okay.
No, I think,
Okay.
where is the revenue coming from?
yes.
Well, it was,
That's
What
wasn't
Kirsten's
it,
acting.
Yes, thank you.
It comes mostly
wasn't it the
from tax money. That's where all our revenue comes from. At least 90% of it.
we,
But it's presumed, isn't it, aren't you basing it on presuming that we're going to get $10,000 more in revenue than we had
Absolutely.
anticipated? I think that's what Kirsten is asking.
Yeah, I think that needs to be clearly stated as part of this resolution, if we're going to make a resolution. I mean, the budget doesn't talk about, the budget, I'm sorry, I'm
Tax,
sorry. The budget doesn't talk about any of the reserve funds that I can see. So are we talking about taking money out of reserve funds to repurpose them for this purpose? Or are we talking about an increase in income that's coming from somewhere? And in which case, then where is it? That should be spelled out as part of this.
we're not taking anything out of reserve funds. We are anticipating normal tax revenues for this year based on the actual 2020 budget. And that budget allows for 102,000 in the book budget.
So I think if we can put that into the resolution, I could be supportive of that.
Okay. I need somebody to say it for me because I have a Paul's microphone does not do well with my speakers here, so I need somebody else to say it to me so that I make sure I'm getting it right.
Evelyn, that's your motion.
So I'll see if I can't rephrase this and
Okay.
get everything. That the board approves of Paul Hickok, director, to reinstitute $10,000 for materials contingent upon acquisition's not the right word. The money coming in from
receipts.
receipts. You can make that sound better, especially the second half. I give you.
Okay, throw it on my shoulders. Contingent upon monies being received.
Yes.
So can I just clarify this for myself? We took $52,000 out of the material budget in the contingency plan in case there was reduced revenue. You're just saying, let's take only 42,000 out of that materials budget for a contingency plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
On the basis
So it's not
that
that we're increasing the budget, it's just that we're not,
Not taking as much out.
we're
not,
it's on the basis that the revenue will be more than,
yeah, because it looks like the revenue isn't going to be as bad as we thought, at least this 6
At least
months,
at
this
time,
year.
right.
at least for the
Okay.
tax receipts. we still don't know about the other sources of revenue. They may
Right.
still be bad.
Okay.
Okay, Michelle, are you clear?
I think I think I have it. Yes. And I second.
Great.
Okay. So all in favor?
I,
Aye.
So 3, Evelyn?
I said aye, yes.
Okay, 4 against. Abstentions?
Aye.
So 1 abstention. Bob, did you vote?
I voted yes.
I'm sorry.
I voted yes also.
I saw you, Kirsten. Bob, you voted yes?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to vote against. So motion carries. Is that it for the director's report, Paul?
That'll do it, yes, I
Okay.
promise.
Observations and community feedback? Is there any?
I just want to make 2
Oh,
comments.
no. This isn't public comment yet.
Oh, this is,
Just whether the board has any feedback that they've heard.
Yes, actually. My almost favorite place to have these conversations at Price Chopper, or I should just say the generic marketplace. I was again asked about, the library, which libraries are open, what hours, and people who were wondering even about different systems. And in their conversation, someone was listening, someone who is associated with the Troy School District and wanted to know more about what the Realm project was finding about, how long the virus lasts, what the safety measures are, what they could do with students and library material. So they were really fascinated by what's going on in library world about materials and wanted to know more about it. So, I gave them what information I certainly had then in contact information. But I thought it was very interesting that the school district was someone working with the school district in one of the schools was trying to work with materials and kids. So that was one. Oh, and yes, someone did ask me about the candidate issue and they asked, so how are candidates supposed to get these signatures? So I know it's on people's minds in how people are going to get even the 18 people to sign and how they could go about it in a safe manner.
I just have one thing about observation. If you're in need of taking a walk and you're also in need of a story at the same time, you can go to Prospect Park and you can see the Troy Public Library Story Walk.
oh, that's great.
That looked really interesting.
Yeah.
I saw a posting. I don't know
I think it's
whether
a good idea.
it was
There's a
the
bunch of-
Friends or the library, but it looked like a really nice thing to do.
Also, I just want to say, I think I might know someone who is interested in being a candidate, and she's my neighbor, and when I told her last year about running, she had said she actually was at the library today. She is a transplant, but has lived here for at least a year. And I was texting her and saying because she had said, oh, I'd actually thought about that. So I'm encouraging her to run.
Great.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to speak with her, and I'm sure Paul would if she wants to do that.
Absolutely. She was texting me. She's like, so who should I talk to? What do I need to do? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I can talk to you a little bit and I can put you in touch with who you need to talk to. She's young. She's 30. She's a social worker. She's a transplant here. And
not another social worker. Really?
She's married to a lawyer. Does that help? Does that offset it?
Interesting combination.
Yeah.
That's great, Michelle. Thank you for encouraging her. Any other feedback? Okay, Arlene, we skipped over the administration committee portion.
Yes,
Do you want to do that now?
Excuse me, I'm going to have to get off this call. So I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to say anything, but I was supposed to be on another Zoom call at 7, so I'm saying goodbye.
Okay, I'll catch up with you. So,
Yeah, so Mark, thank you for sending the survey over. And what we would like to do is, since the survey is, Mark has put it together in a very easy to use format, if everybody could fill one out and send it back. I thought 2 weeks was okay, because however long we give everybody, it's probably going to be done the day before, unless probably 25% of you are more efficient than I am, but and then we'll compile them. And the one piece that we were not sure about was, Paul, we had talked about how to give the feedback to you, and one thought was that Maria and I would meet with you, and I thought other people wanted to do it as a board, and I just wanted to have some discussion about that, about how to present it, how to talk about it. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
I don't know, I just, I guess I'm interested in, people's perspective, and I don't mind if on the board, wants to meet on.
I think usually these things are done in a smaller setting to facilitate more equitable conversation, more open conversation. If it's not a balanced sort of forum, it can make it harder to have conversation. But I think certainly that there should be a larger discussion amongst the board first before that smaller conversation takes place.
So you mean like, so share the results with the board, but then have a smaller meeting with Paul?
Yeah.
That sounds all right to me. What do other people think?
It's been my experience in managing people for 35 years and everything, and I've read a lot of stuff on how to give good constructive feedback as well as positive feedback. Is that in general, the general consensus is that one person to one person is much better than a group of people talking to one person about their performance. So meeting with the board and having a discussion with the board, and then having a representative of the board meeting with Paul would be, I think, healthier.
If we do that, it would be good if we could do, if we could do this before September would be good. So perhaps we could schedule a separate meeting to discuss the results of the survey before the September meeting. Would everybody be in favor of that? We send out a doodle poll?
Sure.
That'd be good.
Okay.
How are we
Yep.
getting?
It will come in. Actually, did you just send it to me, Mark?
I just sent it to you, but I can create it again. I have to find the original email, but I just checked it. I checked in SurveyMonkey. It's still there.
I actually put it on the Dropbox of the library.
Oh,
Does it have all six links in it?
Six
So one
or
of the things,
five. It had all the links. It had all the links. It worked for me. Sometimes things work for me and don't work for others. It's under the administration committee, under library director evaluation.
There are six links. I just want to let everybody know that it was created with six different surveys. I split it up because for the free version of SurveyMonkey, you're limited in the number of questions you can ask, and by splitting it up into 6 different surveys, we don't have to pay for it.
okay, thank you.
And I hope that sufficient time has occurred that even people who are new on the board will be comfortable completing this. And I'd also like you to, since this is the first time it's being used, to think about how it might be improved for the next time. So hopefully we can give Paul feedback on a more regular basis. But I do expect through its actual use that we'll see things we'd like to make different about the evaluation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So feedback on the survey would be much appreciated.
And maybe that could be done in the same board, in the same meeting with the board, because.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the deadline for completing it would be the 23rd? Is that correct?
Yeah. Does everybody want 2 weeks, or are you okay with a week?
I think a
Week
week
is
is
fine for
fine.
me.
Yeah, let's make it a week. So a week from
20th?
today.
Or what's today? The
11th?
Today's the 11th. So the
today's the 11th?
18th.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the links don't work when I send them out, so I'll ask Joy to send the link, the
Please,
link for the Dropbox out to you.
please.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Hers works. Sometimes yours doesn't for me.
Right, yeah, I know. Sorry, I can't test it because it works for me. So.
It's not you. Systems don't always, what's the word for it? Collaborate well.
What is it that you wanted me to send out?
The link to the survey for completion of the library director's evaluation. It's under the administration committee and then under the library director. I can send you the file, the path to that.
Sure.
Joy?
Mark, for those survey results, will they go back to, where will they go?
They're in SurveyMonkey, and then you can print out a report of each one of them.
Can
It's
you do that,
they're
or-
set up. Yeah, I can do that. It doesn't take very long to do. It analyzes the results. I could theoretically share them with people, but I think because it's HR related, I'd feel more comfortable if we didn't do it that way. And we did it in as a board group.
Okay. And then for any written comments, is there room in the SurveyMonkey to fill that out, or does that have to be done separately?
I believe there was, but I created this in February,
Right.
so I haven't looked at it since February.
So if anybody
Since I
feels
looked-
like you have,
Since I looked at it, there are comments on each page. And each
Okay,
page
good.
has a number of questions in the different section of the
okay,
evaluation.
great. If anybody has a comment though, that you feel like for whatever reason you can't include on the SurveyMonkey, then maybe just send it to me by email. Just
Okay.
referring to what section, okay? Thank you.
Anybody else on the evaluation? So next, Arlene, is nepotism.
Oh,
The
right.
nepotism policy.
I guess we were just gonna schedule a meeting to discuss that, is that?
We
I
wanted to
don't-
finalize that. That also was kind of put aside with the contention with COVID. So Arlene is attempting to tie up all the things that she has been involved with before she leaves the board. So you wanted to schedule another meeting for that?
Yeah, so let's get the director eval done first, and then we'll see if we can get that done early enough before in September, we can try to do another meeting about the nepotism regulation. Does that sound all right? Because I don't think I can do 2 extra meetings. And I don't think we should mix them together. I don't think we should review the results of the evaluation and do the nepotism.
Well, then it sounds like Paul won't be at the board meeting that's occurring on the evaluation, right? But
No, we're having a, yeah, right.
But-
Great.
but we'll be at the nepotism policy meeting, so.
Okay, so they have to be separate. Yeah. All right, so we can send out 2 doodle polls then. Right?
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else on the nepotism policy? The information is still on the Dropbox where it was placed originally when this was discussed, as far as what was collected at that time. Old business, new business.
Um,
Evelyn?
I know Freda had to leave. I don't know if she was going to say this, but if anybody else got any of their mail or information, if the bookseller is open again, they came up with their own safety plan in conjunction with the Lansingburg site, but the bookseller has opened again, and I know she's not here, but I want to say thank you again for to the friends for damn those words. Sorry.
Their perseverance.
Say what?
Their perseverance.
I love that, but also their support for programming still, even if it's virtual, like the Music for Shorts Out Loud. So it is much appreciated. So that was one, and two, kind of, I don't know if it's old business, new business, but are we looking at a backup plan in case we can't do any kind of in-person election? So if we have to go to all absentee balloting?
I don't think a backup plan was discussed.
Well, I didn't know if there was one kind of in the works, just in the shadows, like a just in case.
What do
Paul?
we, backup plan for what?
In case there is a change, a sudden change in the allowance of an in-person election. Is there a backup plan just in case we can't do that?
Well, you go to absentee ballots, period.
Right, but are we prepared to do that, like pivot very quickly? Because is it something that has to be sent to every registered voter? Just wondered if we knew how we were going to handle that, like the just in case.
If we're given reasonable notice, it's a matter of getting those applications out. If it's the last minute, I don't know.
Okay.
No, we don't.
All right, I just had to ask. Thank you.
On the primary, what did have in-person voting? And that was
Yeah, every indication right now is that it'll still be allowed in person. So hopefully.
Anything else? Well, the next thing is the public comment. Is there any public comment?
I do have something.
Okay.
I'm sure everybody knows me, but if you don't, I'm Virginia. I'm the head of the circulation department. I kind of wanted to weigh in on your self-checkout suggestion. We did explore this several times in the past, along with any other automated services. So I would first like to say that self-checkout does not replace staff, because if you're standing at the grocery store, you'll know that there's a staff person for that store within arm's reach, because nobody knows how to use it or the machine's not going to act right. So you would need dedicated staff people to actually teach people how to use it or troubleshoot, because you wouldn't be able to take someone away from the desk in order to do that. Also, there are considerations that don't necessarily fit in with our building at Maine. You can't just stick a computer on a desk in the middle of the floor. You have to figure out where you're going to place it. All the holds would have to be accessible to the public in general. Some libraries have all of their holds out in the lobby or in a special place. There's also considerations for privacy, allocating the technology, maintenance of those stations. Now, I'm not trying to sound against self-checkout. I just think that I want everyone to understand that it is much bigger than just getting a checkout station.
I can attest to that. When I worked in San Antonio, we did have a self-checkout. When they installed them, they did not get rid of any staff. It took quite a while for us to teach the patrons how to use it. The biggest problem with it was when people scanned their card and couldn't take anything out because they owed something or there was a lost book or something like that. Then they would still have to come to the desk. So if we're at the desk working with staff members or with patrons, we can't go over to the self-checkout to try and find out or explain to them exactly what's going on. It was difficult, especially in the beginning. I worked there 4 years, and it never really resolved itself. It's a great thing to have if you know how to use it. The problem is a lot of people either don't want to use it or don't want to learn how to use it.
I would also make this comment, and that is the biggest part about our library service is that personal touch. You know, Pat, I know you know this is true, Paul. We know a lot of our patrons by name. We know what they like to read. We know what they're checking out, what they're looking for. Yes, there are some people who just want to go in and grab the one DVD or that book that's right there on the shelf. And I would, again, I'm not against self-checkout, but I just want to make sure that every aspect is considered with self-checkout if you're pursuing that in the future. And I would love to work with, you know, whatever committee or group or whatever to make that feasible if that's what the board wants to do. But it can't just be purchase a self-checkout station and stick it in the lobby.
Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of left all of that out of what I said earlier. You know, because I think it's a misconception to think that the staffing that we have at any given moment is based on how many times they have to check out something. That's not what it's based on. In a larger suburban library, you're likely to have more self-checkouts because self-checkouts happen when the patron has no problem with their card. The card works fine. That's actually more the exception.
You're right.
Rather than the rule. So the percentage of self-checkouts will be much lower in an urban library environment than it would be in a larger.
Right. You're assuming that patrons even actually have their physical card to check out with, which is not typically my experience. So again, not against it. I just want to make sure that going forward in your discussions that you understand that it is much more complicated than it seems.
Anything else?
Again, I think I just want to say again, just we're grateful for the board's support and that they continue, that you guys collectively consider us over and over again with every decision you're making. And we really appreciate you taking the time to explain your positions as well, so it helps us to understand anything that you're considering as well. So that's really helpful to us as a staff.
Well, thank you for attending.
Yeah, really, it's great.
Anything more?
Not from me.
Are we ready to adjourn?
Yes.
The next date and time of the next meeting is September 8th. So meanwhile, see if you can recruit any more candidates.
Yeah,
Okay.
work on that.
It's always nice for people to have a choice, and we've been good at that the last
Yep.
last elections that I've seen. So it would be nice to be able to do that even this year in spite of what everyone is contending with. So thank you.
Yep, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.